Hello, everyone. Welcome to the InstructLab CLI meeting for November 21st, 2024. Thanks for being here. And before we start, as usual, we'll go through some things to reminders to keep the meetings going smoothly. All our meetings are governed by the InstructLab Community Code of Conduct, and the meetings are recorded and will be posted to the InstructLab YouTube channel. You can join with your cameras off if you prefer not to be on camera. And there's also an option to dial in via phone. So feel free to use that if you prefer that. If you're in Google Meet, please use the raise hand function to ask questions. Otherwise, if you're on the phone, you can just try to join in when the opportunity arises. And there's also a chat function in Google Meet. So if you prefer not to speak, that's fine as well. You can use the chat function to discuss things and ask questions, and we'll try to check that and bring up your questions and comments. All right, thanks for populating the agenda. We have quite a few items. I will let, I guess, Nathan or Charlie to talk about the 0.21 release.
Yeah, so the 0.21 release. So big release, pretty shortly after 0.20, but actually still had a good amount of content. And I want to highlight mainly some new features I think will be useful for people to know about, as well as some breaking changes folks should be aware of. We have a few of the other maintainers here, so I may call you out to talk about what you've done here. So I assume Charlie would like to talk about system profiles. That's a very large feature, and maybe Charlie, the train profile deprecation and the differences between them two. This is something people get confused about.
Sure. Yes. So in 0.21, we added the concept of a system profile, which basically just sets an entire config for your system. And we have auto detection for basically every Mac chip except for the M4s because they just came out. And every NVIDIA GPU that we previously had a training profile for. We have Intel and AMD CPU system profiles, and we have some kind of a more intensive GPUs like the Gaudi 3, and I think we might have an MI 300X one in the works for AMD systems. But basically, if you're on any of those systems, if you're on NVIDIA or Apple, they will be, or Intel or AMD CPUs, they'll be auto detected for you. And yeah, you should just be able to run all the commands basically without any flags, except for the ones that change. So like data paths and model paths and stuff like that. If you want to specify something new, it should just work. Of course, this is all iterative, as all software is. So you might find some quirks. Please feel free to file a bug, or if you don't have a profile for your system, just feel free to open a bug or to file a PR with the profile. And that being said, training profiles are deprecated. It's not a huge deal because I think most people were just using the training profiles that we provided. And you can still provide a -- profile to ILAB config in it. And if you just want training config, then you can just specify just the training section of a configuration and the rest will be filled in for you. So not a really big deal there, but yeah, it's a step in the right direction for our configuration system because we're really trying to get to a point where users shouldn't have to care about all of the options if they don't want to, but they can, of course, if they're an expert user. Yeah, that's pretty much it for system profiles. I can pass it to Granite 3 support. I think JD, if you want to add some notes on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, with this release, we added support for a new architecture of models, essentially, which is the Granite 3.0. It's its own sort of model architecture, which has been included in like a lot of places like Transformers and Llama CPP, etc. So it's like previously we were kind of mainly working with Llama architecture models, which was the Granite 7B and Merlinite, and like all of the default models have been of Llama architecture, which are like natively recognized. So now we've sort of added support for Granite, which is its own architecture that's been released by IBM. So this includes things like needing to detect the architecture to pick the correct chat template and the correct system format, system prompt for that, and things like that, and needing to pass it into other libraries, like for SDG, it uses it for whatever it does inside, as well as training. The one thing to note is that the support is currently been fully implemented for safe tensor models and like VLLM if you're on Linux. It's not entirely been implemented for Llama for GGUF models. Mainly the reason for that is that Llama CPP has been upgraded to recognize Granite architecture GGUFs to be able to serve and chat with, etc. But we are currently using an older version of Llama CPP, and there is a PR open to upgrade it, but it's been blocked because there's some open bug that hasn't merged yet. And I think that's the reason we didn't upgrade it. But until we upgrade to Llama CPP 0.3, we won't be actually able to chat with Granite architecture GGUS locally. So I'm happy to raise a PR to do that, but we should probably at some point prioritize just getting that Llama CPP upgrade merged, even if there might be a potential for like an open bug. We should probably like do like an evaluation to see how much that bug is likely to affect us. And if it's not as great as we previously thought, then it's probably best to do that, because once we're able to upgrade Llama CPP, then we can serve and chat with Granite architecture models, as well as convert Granite architecture safe tensor models into GGUF. That conversion script has also been upgraded on Llama CPP's end, and I think we can't pull that in until we upgrade Llama CPP itself. So just a couple of caveats there, hoping to be able to resolve those soon. That's pretty much it for Granite 3 support. Yes, Karen.
Yes, so in the Granite 3 family, there's several like sizes models, I guess. There's like the 8B, 3B, and 1B. Are all of them supported or just the 8B?
So the support wasn't really implemented keeping the size of the model in mind. It's mainly just based on if the model has the architecture set as Granite. So any of these models, if they are in fact using the Granite architecture, because I know that like the code models, etc., came out before like the Granite architecture itself. So I don't know if not every Granite model that's been released is actually using the Granite architecture itself. So whichever models use the Granite architecture, this change would apply to those.
Okay. And would that information be available in, I guess, the Hugging Face model?
Yeah, there's a
yeah.
every model has a config file, and there's like a field in there that dictates what architecture it is.
Okay, because this was actually a question from somebody in one of the social channels. I need to figure out which one I saw it in and reply to that. But okay, I'll check that, and thanks for the info.
Okay, cool. Yeah, feel free to tag me if there is an ongoing conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Cal. I'll pass it to Alina to talk about the next one.
Yes, so we added a temperature flag to iLab model chat. So that allows users to adjust the response generation behavior they have. And the lower the value they put for that, the more deterministic and focused responses they'll get. But if you do it higher, like it'll increase the randomness you get from it. With that, we also remove the greedy mode flag. So that's a breaking change as well. So if anyone's using that in scripts or workflows, they should ensure it's compatible now. I can move to training optimizations. Charlie, is that you?
Yep.
Cool.
So I think I've mentioned this before, but the full training pipeline should now work on a 16 or 32 gigabyte machine. I really recommend that people use the full pipeline, not simple. Simple, especially on a Mac, has to use iLab model convert, which hasn't really been actively maintained. I think switching to the full pipeline, which produces a GGUF model during the training, is the right move for most people. It takes longer, but it produces a higher fidelity model. So please switch to that if you have the ability. I think we're in the works of creating a deprecation plan for the simple pipelines. So adjusting the workflows accordingly is probably the right move. So thank you. And then SGG optimizations, I can speak about this one a little bit. We added a maximum tokens flag, which when you're generating knowledge, the default is 4096, but you can turn this down to something like 512 to get a faster SCG run with less data. Because I know people are saying that it takes forever and it also generates a lot of data. And then when you're running on a laptop, your training then takes a really long time. So using that maximum tokens flag basically just allows you to get less data, but the data is still pretty high fidelity. So yeah. And then the next one is context-aware chunking, which I'll pass to Khalid for that.
Yeah, so for context-aware chunking, basically, when you go into the SDG pipeline and you process the document, you split it up into different chunks. We've implemented something that uses Dockling, which is a up-and-coming open source project from IBM that basically splits it into better chunks that lead to a lot better results when you're training. And the big user-facing feature on this as well, outside of better results, is that you can now use PDF documents. So the same way you would in your Q&A YAML, you would link a markdown and do the document repo and all that stuff. You can now do this as PDF files. Yeah, that's all for chunking.
Cool. I think that's kind of all of the features in general. There are some breaking changes. I think we talked about the train profile deprecation. Nathan, I don't know if you want, I don't know if you've mentioned this yet, but did you mention the Neuronite Granite breaking change?
No, but I will touch on that briefly. In addition to the support JD mentioned for the Granite, the new Granite 3 models, we have switched over the defaults that we had. This was sort of separate work, but we switched over a lot of the defaults from Merlinite to Granite, since it's sort of become, I think I talked about this in a previous meeting, so I won't go too in depth here, but has become very much a Granite first project. So this is just updating those defaults to sort of reflect that and hopefully minimize confusion people have had using Merlinite. Merlinite is still used for simple STG, but other than that, it's all Granite and Mistral for those default models. So you can see there's a lot more detail in the change log and the associated issues. So if you're curious, I'd encourage you to either read that or check out the previous video recording where I talk about this in depth. But that's it, Carol.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for the details. Any questions about the release before we move on? Okay, so the next we have dev docs for refactoring. Dev docs. Is it you, Nathan, or somebody else?
This was mentioned last week.
Okay.
We mentioned that we would put something on the agenda for it, so it's not me, but I did throw it on there since it was mentioned in last week's agenda that we would. This involves sort of decoupling some of the functionality from STG. STG, this is a very high level overview, but STG currently does sort of pre-processing of data, the actual synthetic data generation, and then some post-processing of that. So the idea is that in the near term, they're going to be decoupling those things and have them be exposed to separate APIs, all within the STG library. And then following the completion of that work, those functionalities we moved out of STG into the CLI so that STG is purely synthetic data generation. So the details are in there. If you're interested, please review the doc. Feel free to make comments. Bill Murdoch is the one who's authored that, and you can find him in Upstream Slack. And there's a second doc there. This one I did author. This one basically is about sort of what exactly we as an organization want to achieve in the CLI prior to doing a 1.0.0 release. So these are sort of more long-term, higher-level goals. I'm starting to break stuff down. I've gotten some great feedback on that. So thanks to the folks that reviewed. If you hadn't reviewed, please take a look if you're interested. If not, that's all right. We'll be approaching this with lazy consensus. So after a few weeks, if we've reached a consensus among those who have contributed, I'll be merging it, and that will become the official document. Same goes for that and any other dev doc. So yeah, anyone have any questions or comments about either of these? Cool.
All right. Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, if you have any comments, you can either raise them now, or you can also check. Well, take some time to take a look at the PRs and comment on them. Cool. And we have two very cool blog posts. Would the authors like to just comment briefly on this before we
Sure.
dive into them?
Yeah, so this one is mine. It's just like a tutorial on how to use InstructLab with the most recent releases. Because I know that there's a lot of options, there's a lot of different pipelines, and this is kind of, in my opinion, the way that most people who are trying to, teach knowledge to a model. And I mentioned some skill stuff in here as well, but this is the way that most people should be using InstructLab. It lays out the different types of models you can use, the different pipelines, the different options to make the pipelines run either quicker or longer with more data. And yeah, it gives a kind of like a simple example of using Mudang. I figured that using that was a good one because it's something that everyone knows about. It's very not like it's hard to provide a blog with an example that's also not relatable, because then people can't really put the context there. So yeah, I see Julia, you have your hand up.
Yes. So this blog post is a wonderful example of a very strong YAML file.
Thank you. I wrote it myself.
Great job. Wow. All
Yeah,
right.
so if people are looking for like another good example of a YAML file that's not the same one that's in the README, then we could potentially direct them here. Great job, Charlie.
Thanks.
Yeah, JJ.
Being recorded, I got to ask the question. There's a lot more questions here and answers in 15. Is that by design, or has that statement changed now?
There's 15.
I think there's 15.
Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I count it wrong? Oh, my
There's
bad.
3 under
Yeah.
each of the 5 contexts.
Yeah, there's
I
1,
can't. I
2,
guess
4.
It
I
looks
can't
like
do
a
math.
lot. I think I did the formatting in a way that kind of made it look like more questions and answers, but it's just 15. Yeah. So
I
Yeah.
guess I can't count. But hey, at least we got it on recording, right?
12, 13, 14. 18? Am I right?
is it?
There's 1 context, 2, 3.
Oh, did I do an extra context? I
4,
might have.
5, 6. Yes.
Yeah, I did an extra
That'd be
context.
18.
Yeah, so it's 18. Yeah. Yeah, I mean 15 should have been fine. I think I just because the document was kind of small, I wanted to include one last context chunk that kind of was like the bottom of the document. So I could have done 15, but yeah.
So that brings up the question: is that is that a I know best practices is a bad term, right? But people are going to ask these questions, especially if we start pointing people to that. Should we say that if it's a small document, you should be a little bit more creative with it, or should we still stick with the 15 as the general rule?
I think the 15 is fine because either way, it's going to pull chunks from the entire document. So this was just my way of being thorough, I guess.
Cool. Just checking.
It also has to do with what we're supporting right now. So right now it will ignore the 6th context. I believe that's being expanded, but Khalid, do you have any? Weren't there plans for that to be expanded?
For the number of contexts,
Yeah.
yeah, so we should be able to moving forward. I'm not quite sure when we'll enable this, but something on the roadmap is to be able to support more than just 5 contexts. But as of right now, it's 5.
Yeah. Yep. And again, it just ignores it.
So does it ignore the last one or a random context?
The last one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because when I asked this is probably just going into the specifics too much because I know that the whole document gets chunked regardless. But like we should probably make that clearer because if I write this and then it's like I go and ask the model, oh, who portrayed Boudin on Saturday Night Live? It knows. So then in my head, if I'm someone who's using this for the first time, I'm thinking that 6th context did something when in reality it didn't.
I actually don't know that it necessarily ignores the last one. It might just ignore a certain amount of, because it's based on the context window size and stuff like that. So like it might be doing that filtering after the chunks.
Yeah, an easy way
Look
for us
into
to
that.
test this would be for someone to run this, see how like as you're running SDG, how much is generated because it's pretty easy to see even as it gets to the gen knowledge phase, and then run it with 5 and see if it is different or less specifically. Because if it's
Yeah,
less,
I can
then
see. Oh, sorry, keep going.
because if it's less, then that means that it isn't ignoring the 6th one most likely. So that would be a good test. I'm sure Akanksha or someone else would know this as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I can see if Abhishek knows and see if he's done testing on that because we have not. Yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on that answer.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, thanks. I believe the second one is by Jaydeep.
Yeah. So this is just a high level sort of architecture overview to give people sort of peek into how this project is structured under the hood. It doesn't go into too much detail, but I think that was sort of the point, to try to keep it easy to digest. But basically, for anyone who's interested in developing and contributing to the whole project, not just the CLI, it's helpful to have a sort of 1,000-foot view of how the project is actually structured, so you know like what's going where. So this just talks about all the different repositories, the different components, where they're located, what they do, like high level. It talks about some of the dependencies and sort of tech stack that is used in certain components, like what other projects we're using, VLLM, Llama, CPP, all of the training sort of backend we use, like CUDA stuff, we use PyTorch, that kind of stuff is highlighted. And it talks about like a workflow for how these different repositories interact with each other through an average sort of length, like a workflow that starts from the CLI and ends in like a trained model, how the different sort of repositories are invoked. And yeah, it's I think it's just a good read for anyone who's trying to get their bearings before they decide to contribute in any specific part of this workflow. So yeah, hopefully people are able to read it and get something out of it.
Thanks. I think this is really useful to get a more kind of cohesive picture of the whole project instead of focusing on what the commands do and what options there are, which is of course needed, but having the better understanding will also help in running the instruct-labs. So I'll definitely look closer into this because I know there's a lot of things I don't know from this from skimming through this. So thank you both for the great blog posts.
Thanks, Carol.
All right, Nathan has one cooking. Stay tuned for that. Can you give a hint what is on, or you want to save the surprise?
I'll keep it a surprise, but if you know me, then you could probably guess.
Okay, cool.
Is it a blog post on all the different types of meetings we have?
Charlie said it, not
No
me.
one wants to read about that.
I was gonna say a Google Calendar blog post, but
How to properly use Google Calendar. Honestly, I think it's a blog post people could use,
how to
but
properly
not one that I'll
notify
be writing.
people in Slack channels.
How about how to invite people, invites and exceptions for invites? They're just calendaring. It's
Yeah.
2024.
Honestly, they should teach this thing in school.
Mhm.
That might be better as a video, like a vlog or something. more entertaining.
It really grinds my gears.
Yeah.
Waking up to 4 new calendar invites on my calendar for the day.
Well, most of
I
them
think
aren't
that's never
invites;
happened
they
to
just
me.
exist and are there.
Maybe in your world, I get invites.
I get both.
All right. Okay. So any additional comments or topics you want to discuss that's not related to calendar invites?
I think I saw someone from the community join us here a little while ago. Yeah, Justin. He's popped up in the channel a handful of times, or the Slack channels. I don't mean to call you out, Justin, but are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm the UX designer that worked for Red Hat.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Do you have any questions for these wonderful people working on the CLI stuff?
No, right now I'm just happy to be a fly on the wall. So I appreciate it.
We appreciate having you here. All right. Anything else? Any other topics related or not so related to InstructLab? Open floor. If not, if you haven't heard already, we have a documentation working group meeting every other Wednesday. And if you, I think, was it 12 Eastern, 11 Central? I'm so bad with timing, the time zones. But if you subscribe to the InstructLab calendar, you will see it. If you want a direct invitation, let me know. I'll invite you. So that's for working on docs.instructlab.ai. The meeting minutes are also available, and the async discussions happens in the docs Slack channel on InstructLab Slack. All right, that's all I have. And last call for any items for today. Cool. Let's thank you again for your time. Let's get working on this cool stuff. Try out 0.21 and check out the great blog posts. And we'll meet again next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.